So, all right. So welcome to everyone. And I'm Kristen. I am a member of CHAD and the coordinator of the ADHDKCTeen chapter. CHAD is our nationwide support group for ADHD. And most chapters have meetings every month for parents or adults with ADHD. We're one of the few that actually has one for teens. So since we have so many people here today, thought I would mention that. And then CHAD is our national chapter. They have their rules. One of them is to read this disclaimer at the beginning of each meeting. So CHAD believes that the information about products, services, publications, medications, and treatments should be made available to its members so they can make informed decisions for themselves and their families. As such, CHAD does not endorse products, services, publications, medications, or treatments. So with that out of the way, today I'm going to talk about procrastination. This is a commonly requested topic. So hopefully you guys will learn from this. And if you have questions, certainly ask. All right. So procrastination, most of us know what it is because we all do it. It's the action of delaying or postponing something. It's not laziness. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people, when they procrastinate, they feel guilty because they feel like they're being lazy. Because we know that when we finish tasks, we feel accomplished. We get more time to do things that we want to do, which is awesome. And then we also meet our own expectations and goals, and other people are happy with us. So when we finish tasks, it's great, but unfortunately, it is hard sometimes to get that motivation up to do whatever we need to do. And it's not because of laziness. There we go. People with ADHD actually have more problems with procrastination, and it's somewhat related to the dysfunction with executive functioning and self-regulation. Executive functioning involves all of the task management or time recognition and organizational skills, short-term memory, all kinds of things that not everybody with ADHD has all of the problems of all of the executive functions, but people who have problems with executive functions and self-regulation have more problems with procrastination, because just doing everyday tasks, prioritizing them and getting them done, staying on task, not losing focus, all of those are really, really, really difficult for people with ADHD, especially compared to their neurotypical peers. And neurotypical just means kids that are, or adults that develop normally, their brain functions in the way that is typical. It does not mean that people with ADHD brains are broken. Their brains work very well, but they have some unique differences than the typical brain development and working. So research shows that procrastination stems from the inability to self-regulate mood and emotions. And a lot of times when we have those negative thoughts about doing something, we dislike it or we just aren't excited by it, it's hard to get that task initiated. And sometimes just flipping that negative thought about it to a positive thought can make a world of difference. So I always talk about the big three because eating right, sleeping, exercise all come down to so much of what we do. I love this cartoon from Teen Health Doc about how to train or sleep train a teenager. Because it is so important for kids to get sleep, for adults to get sleep, and teenagers to get sleep. And teenagers, unfortunately, a lot of times their circadian rhythm switches and they tend to want to stay up later and sleep in later. Unfortunately, school starts too early for that. And it's really hard for them to be functional during the typical day that everybody expects them to be. So it's really important for teens to get enough sleep, focusing on wake times so that they can get up, and that will help set the sleep time, because if you get up and you don't sleep in, you don't take too long of naps at least, that can help you go to sleep. You want to get 8 to 10 hours. And if you really have trouble sleeping, talk to your parents, talk to your physician. Sometimes melatonin can be used, sometimes other medications are used, especially with ADHD. When you guys with ADHD, people lay down to go to sleep, their brain all of a sudden is going crazy, thinking about a million and one other things. Anxiety can do that as well. And teenagers oftentimes have anxiety. So if you find yourself struggling to sleep, definitely do some of the common things like making the room dark, cool, not too hot, keeping the house quiet, not doing like silly tickle fights with your siblings or your dad, doing quieting activities, trying to turn off the screens because the screen suppresses your natural melatonin, which you need to go to sleep. So super important to try to do things offline, which unfortunately, if you have all of your homework and stuff online, it makes it really difficult. But super important. And then exercise actually helps us sleep better and of course helps our brain function. Sometimes if you were stuck in a rut, getting up and moving around is all you need to do because that stimulates your brain to function better. So that can actually help getting exercise. And then of course, eating healthy, super important. And when kids have ADHD, a lot of times, especially if they're medicated, it affects their appetite. Even if they're not medicated though, stimulant medications suppress your appetite, but they also suppress impulsivity. And a lot of people with ADHD tend to be impulsive, meaning they will do things without thinking. And impulsive eating is one of those things. And sometimes eating is used as a procrastination tool. Oh, I gotta go get something to eat. Then I can sit down and focus. And a lot of times, if you choose the wrong foods that have too much sugar or not enough nutrients, then you're not getting a good fuel for your brain. So keeping healthy snacks available so that when you do come down at the end of the day off of your stimulant medication, if you're on it, or just after a long day of being at school, when you start to feel hungry in the evening hours, having healthy snacks, super important. All right, then more specifically for procrastination things, one of the things that we all can do is identify and then limit the things that distract us. Screen time is huge. Most people have a phone or computer near them at all times. And it's so easy to just check one more time to see if anybody posted anything or look to see if you have any messages. So use tools in your device to help moderate some of that. You can check your screen time depending on if you have an Android or an iPhone, different ways to do that. There are certain apps that can do it, and sometimes it's just within your phone, but look to see how much time you spend doing things. And a lot of times we always think we don't have enough time to get stuff done, but we can easily cut back on the several hours a day that studies show that people spend doing worthless things, just scrolling through different social media sites or playing games or doing things. So limit your screen time, and there are apps that will actually help you with that because you can set your own times. Like if you only want to spend a certain amount of time on a certain app a day, you can set that, and then it won't let you do it other times. Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp were down yesterday for 6 hours. I bet a lot of people were a whole lot more productive just because they didn't waste their time doing those things because it was a forced downtime from something that went wrong with the companies. So screen time is the number one thing for a lot of teenagers and adults to monitor, but also the cleanliness of your study area. Some people get distracted because they've got papers and books and whatever sitting around near their study area. So if you need to clean it up first, spend 2 seconds getting it ready, and then you can sit down and study versus starting to study, oh, get distracted, oh, get distracted. So making sure that your area is set for what you're going to be doing. And then if you can use alerts and notifications wisely, I do think that is fabulous because it can remind you to stay on task. But the ones that are not essential, the alerts from social media apps or from your emails or whatever, turn those alerts off. You don't need to have notifications popping up. They're very distracting. And then if you're in an area that has other noises going on, use headphones, either noise canceling or with music, which I'll talk about in a minute, to help decrease the background noise so you can stay focused. And then if your mind wanders a lot, typically people with ADHD have problems with staying on task because they can focus on many things at once, or they try to focus on many things at once. Their mind goes all over the place. So if you know that happens, think about the times of days that you are most focused, especially if you're medicated, that time that the medicine is working. Use that time to do the tasks that you find most boring or difficult to do. Because if you enjoy doing some subjects, you can push that off till when your brain is not quite as focused, because you can focus more naturally on the things that you enjoy. But the subjects that you find difficult or just boring, those are the hardest ones. So you want to use your time wisely and plan accordingly as needed with medications if you take them for your ADHD. And then if you find that you don't have time, like a lot of times younger kids take medication that works great for the school hours, but it wears off by the after school hours. And that works fine for grade school when they don't have a lot of homework. But as you get into middle school and high school and you have more homework, you might need to readjust your medications, either changing the morning dose or adding a booster dose. And that would be something to discuss with your doctors. And then make sure that that evening dose or afternoon dose doesn't affect sleep, because sleep, again, super, super important. I do want everyone to get enough sleep. I see far too many teenagers getting 4 to 6 hours on a regular schedule, and that is not okay. We need to sleep. Ideally, 9 hours a night is probably average for most teens. 8.5 to 10, though, is what's generally recommended, depending on if you're still growing or not. And then hunger. Hunger is a big distraction. So if you are typically needing food at a certain time, make sure you plan for that and have a healthy snack available, because if you're hungry, you might just go grab something if it's not planned. That's not very healthy. All right, and then I mentioned I would come back to music. Music can be a fabulous thing to do if you need to get rid of some background noise, or even just studies have shown that sometimes music helps your brain focus, but you don't want to pick just a, list of foods or music that does not I'm sorry, I was turning somebody on mute. But you don't want to pick music that has a song that is new or interesting to you, something you'll sing along to, because then that is a distraction in and of itself. Things that are just like background music, classical, trance music, those kind of things can help. Or some people even just listen to the same song again and again and again. It just becomes part of the background then, and it's not as distracting. All right, so one of the things that we can all do is set time limits when we're doing things. Having a clock that you can see physically can help people stay on task. And then, as I mentioned before, you don't want notifications popping up for everything that's distracting, but a lot of people can use notifications and alarms to help keep you on target with things. So if you need to do that, have different sounds for different kinds of alerts so that you know that, oh, that means I'm supposed to be finishing with this task because I have to move on to the next task. And then when you are preparing your calendar, your list of things to do, make sure that you include everything in it, not just the actual task itself. If you just put that you have to do homework, it's really hard to decide how much time you need for that. But if you have time to plan and get your area strategized and set up the way you need it, include that time in there, include breaks in there, include sleep in your schedule, include meal times with family or friends or however you're going to eat. Put everything in your calendar as much as possible so that you can get to know your routine and make time to in sufficient amounts for different things. And definitely include breaks. You can't work and power it out for hours and hours and hours without breaks. It's not healthy for anybody. But one of the problems with people with ADHD is time blindness. And basically that just means that you over or underestimate how much time it's going to take to do lots of things. And that's one of the reasons that people with ADHD are chronically late. They don't really understand the concept of time. They will say, oh, I'll be there in 10 minutes, even though it takes 10 minutes to drive wherever you're going and you still don't have your outfit on, you don't have your shoes on, you haven't packed your bag. You can't physically be there in 10 minutes, but that's what you say and that's what you believe, because the time just doesn't make any sense to a lot of people. So you can learn to estimate time better. You can practice it. Physically write down how much time you think it'll take to do different assignments, different tasks, different reports, cleaning your room, whatever it is you need to do. keep track of how long it actually takes you. If you do that for a while, you will get better at estimating time. And then you can better control your schedule when you know how much time it's going to take for things to do. And remember too that time matters. If you have a deadline 3 weeks away, your brain thinks about that differently. That rush, that anticipation isn't really there. If it's 3 hours away, it makes a big difference. So a lot of people will push off, oh, it's 3 weeks away. I don't need to work on that paper tonight. I'll work on it tomorrow. I'm too tired today. But you do that enough days and eventually you don't have time to work on that big project. Whereas when things are 3 hours away, if it's going to take 3 hours to get it done, you feel that adrenaline rush. And sometimes that helps motivate people, but you have to be really careful because what that does is it has you rush through things and you don't do as good of a quality in whatever that task is. So give yourself sufficient time to do things and make sure that you stay on task and target with the smaller pieces of big projects. All right, and that's where organization really helps, because if you know what you're doing in advance, you can make sure that you schedule in time for lots of things and make sure that you have time for each part of the things that you're doing. So using a planner is huge. Either do it on paper, like the little journal book that's pictured, or online. Some people prefer one or the other. You might need to try both and see which one you like better. Some people are very visual, and having a whiteboard, just like in the classroom, especially in grade school, teachers will write the little daily list of things that are going to happen so kids can know what's going to happen, and being able to visualize it and see it can help. And you can use the whiteboards for big things. You can use it for fun things. You can use it, color code it, however you want to make it work, so that you can stay on task with those big things in life. And then have the planner for the more minute to minute, day to day kind of things. And then always schedule in not only the big tasks, but also some breaks. If you're going to study for a long time, you need that time to get up and move. And then every day get in the habit in the morning, look at your planner so you know what to anticipate for the day, so you don't forget that after school you have somewhere to go. Look at it each evening, make sure you got through everything you were supposed to do. And then at least once a week, look at the whole month and look at the week ahead in more detail. That way you don't overextend yourself and tell people that you can go do something when you already had something planned. Or if you have something planned that needs to be moved or changed because something new pops up that takes precedence. I know a lot of adults who don't realize that they double book things and they miss meetings, they miss important things because they had two things scheduled at the same time. Usually you can rearrange one of them, but you have to know in advance. So don't have surprises. Get in the habit. Sunday evening is a good time to look at the whole month, then look at the week in a little more detail, and then of course the next day, always the next day. All right, if you guys have been coming to these meetings for any length of time, I use the ADHD alien cartoons quite a bit in my pictures because I love the way she just takes regular things with ADHD and makes it so understandable. In this cartoon, she's going to clear the kitchen table off because she's got to do that. But then she realizes the sink is full. So, I got to do the dishes first. But there's no room to clear that off. So I need to take the trash out, but I'm still in my pajamas. I can't go outside with my pajamas on. And then I don't want to get dressed before I take a shower. So now I got to take a shower, and just that whole and she can't get the one thing done. So in the bottom picture, somebody's like, hey, you okay? You only needed to clear the table. But she's overwhelmed with just trying to organize and prioritize. And whenever we think about things that we need to get done, a lot of times we get distracted, like she did in this picture, but we also don't necessarily differentiate the things that should be higher on our priority list versus lower. Sometimes the lower ones are easier to do. I can quickly do this, I can quickly do that. So you want to get those done. And sometimes that actually works, because sometimes that elevates your mood, makes you feel better about things because you're feeling accomplished, you get stuff done. But if you do that too much, then you run out of time to get done with the thing that's the most important. So you need to prioritize and not just do the easy tasks, but sometimes do the challenging ones. And again, pick the right time to do the challenging ones when you are well rested, before it gets too late, especially if medications wear off. Maybe sandwich difficult things between things that will motivate you. Do something that's easy to kind of get your motivation up, do the harder task, and then finish with something that you like to do so that kind of mentally reward yourself. All right. Again, if you've been coming to these meetings for a while, we've talked about the Pomodoro Technique before. It got its name from a tomato, the old kitchen timers that look like a tomato. Basically, the theory with this is that you pick a task that you need to get done and you set a timer for 25 minutes, and all you do for those 25 minutes is that task. You put a sign on your door not to disturb you, turn off all your alarms, ringers, everything else, and for 25 minutes you just get going on whatever that task is. And then when the buzzer goes off, you click it that you've done it for 20 minutes and you set your timer again for 5. In that 5-minute break, you can get some exercise, you can go to the bathroom, you can get a drink of water, you can do whatever for 5 minutes, something fun. You can check your social media at that 5 minutes. You can talk to a friend for that 5 minutes, but you have that set time so that the 5-minute break is over, you reset your alarm for 25 more minutes. And so basically you're in blocks of 30 where you work for 25, 5-minute break, work for 25, 5-minute break. And you can do that for up to 4 sessions. And then after 4 sessions, get a longer break. And this is a way a lot of people can power out. If you have a really big project to work on a Saturday afternoon, you can sit there for a couple hours with these scheduled breaks, and that can help a lot of people. Now, if you can't sit for 25 minutes because you just can't, and a lot of people with ADHD really do struggle for 25 minutes, set it for 15 and just take short breaks. But sometimes just getting a set time that's a reasonable amount of time makes it a whole lot easier for people to get started. So this technique works for a lot of people with ADHD. Another thing that I found interesting when I was looking all of this up, there is a researcher in Canada who found that when people use kind of like a guided imagery thing where they just picture themselves finishing the task, whatever that big task is that you dread doing, cleaning out your whole closet or writing a book report, whatever it is you have to do. If you're really dreading it, picture yourself and how good you will feel when it's done. Because if you picture that, that motivates you a little bit because you can see it happening. You can also picture how awful you would feel if it's not getting done. And that also has been shown to help with motivation, although the powerful positive message is even better. And a lot of athletes use this kind of mental imagery like showing or thinking about how well they will do, how great they're going to feel when they win the game. And that works for a lot of people. It's a very real phenomenon. So a way to motivate, if you can't think of anything else that you want to do about that topic, think about how great it would feel to finish that and then get going on it. Then, of course, ask for help. I don't know if you guys know Zits. Zits is something that used to be around when people actually got comics every Sundays. This kid is touching his book. He knows he's got to do his work, but he's frustrated. He doesn't want to do it. He's bored. So he actually asks his mom, I need you to nag me into action. And of course, the mom's like, yeah, give me the topic. Tell me what to do, because parents are there for you. They want to help. And a lot of parents will try not to nag because nagging just brings all that negativity to things. But if you ask for help in an earnest way, probably you don't really want your mom to nag because that feels like a negative. But maybe your parent can help you with some organization. Maybe you can ask your parent to help remind you every day to check the list of things to make sure you got all the stuff done. They help oversee some deadlines. And then as you get better at learning those organizational skills and doing what you need to do, they should slowly back away, letting you gain more independence, because I don't want you guys to move out of the house when you're 18 or 20 or however old you are when you move out of the house and not know how to set your own alarm and get out of bed and do things. But parents can help with that, and it's okay to ask for help. If they need help, then, or if you need help, they're certainly good to give help. And then you can also ask teachers. Sometimes teachers are good at helping with organization. There might be maybe not your teacher for that class, but maybe a different teacher in the school who helps, especially with organization, task management, note-taking skills, things like that. And then a lot of people are surprised you can use friends. When you try to do studying, I think a lot of people realized this when it was, the full lockdown and everybody was having to do virtual learning. Sitting at home by yourself in a room, it's so easy to get distracted. You'd think it would be no distractions because there's no other people, but it is so distracting. So a lot of people do better with a study buddy, as long as you and the study buddy don't, mess around and not talk to one another. They can help you stay on task, even if they're not talking to you. You're just sitting across the table, each working on your own thing. Just having another body in the room oftentimes helps. And for that reason, a lot of people will use libraries or study after school if they have a study hall kind of place, because then you're with other people. Even if you're not talking to them at all, you're not asking for help, although they can help. If your friend is better at a certain subject, maybe you can get some help from them. Or maybe if you stay after school, they have tutoring available, things like that. That is certainly an option, but it doesn't have to be for that. It could just be to have the other body in the room. That can definitely help keep people motivated. And then a lot of people have this problem. They want it to be perfect, whatever the task is, writing the paper, building a piece of furniture, whatever it is, they want it to be perfect. So they think about it, they stew about it, they get so worked up about the final product being perfect, get paralyzed, they can't even get started. They can't write the title of the page if they want the final product to be finished and perfect. So if you're overwhelmed, it's pretty much common sense. I think not even common sense, but it's taught. Teachers will have you break things down. They don't ever say, okay, you have a big project due this date. They usually say, okay, there's this big project we're working on, but you have this part of it due this date, this part of it due this date, this part of it due this date, especially in grade school. By the time you're in high school or college, if you make it to college, then they usually will just assign a paper. But by that time, you should have learned how to break things into smaller tasks. And even if the teacher doesn't have deadlines, you can set your own deadlines. And this goes through with bosses too. When you're in the workplace, you're going to have to set deadlines so that you get projects turned in on time. And don't focus on the final task. That's the part that's overwhelming. Focus on whatever it is you need to do at this step. And getting started is what you need to focus on, because most of us, when we get anxious about things, we're worried about the things in the future. We're worried about the final product. We're worried about what's going to happen. We don't worry about the things we're doing right now. So right now, focus on what you're doing right now. And that might just be whatever you have to do for that step, the very starting part. Think about that. And then be easy on yourself. We are always our harshest critics. If you start saying, oh, I never understand this math, I can't do this math homework, I'm not good enough for this, you're never going to get started. You're going to keep that mental gymnastics going with all that negativity. Try to flip some of those negative thoughts. I never get this the first time I try, but if I keep working, I always end up getting it done. Or I can ask for help. Or I don't understand this yet, but I bet if I read a little bit more, I will. It doesn't even have to be completely positive. Starting, you're flipping something that you're having that negative thought to a positive thought. And ideally it is, think about all the times in the past that you couldn't do what you thought you couldn't do. They always worked out. Very few people have failed every test, right? Even if you feel like you're going to fail it because you don't understand it, remember, what is the reality of that? You're probably not going to fail it. You're probably going to study and do okay. You're probably going to be able to finish the paper and get a decent grade on it. But you have to recognize the fear of failure for what it is, and then think about the reality of what's probably going to happen, looking back maybe on other things that have happened that were very similar and how it turned out, because most of the time it turns out okay. And if it doesn't, if you always fail every test, something's not right. If you're really trying, then maybe talk to the teachers, get assessed for learning disability, something. most of the time, people do okay if they really try. So get the negative thoughts out of your head. And then you might need to just focus on the one or two little steps. This is interesting. You can either set a time limit for a very short time to just get started. You know, you have that big overwhelming project to do. Just say, okay, I'm going to work on it for 5 minutes, but you have to work on it for that 5 minutes. Or you can set a goal of, I will do just the one math problem to get it started, or I will just write the title or the first sentence or the first paragraph, whatever you think you can legitimately do that doesn't seem overwhelming. Because if you do that one thing that starts it, a lot of times you can continue. It's the getting started that's hard. So if you're overwhelmed, just get started. That's the thing. Just jump in and do it. And so again, this is a very similar cartoon to the one before. This kid's saying, you know, I'm just going to get started, just get it done. Oh, but first let me do this and this and this and this. Sometimes we use other things to avoid the task that we really need to do. So don't use other tasks as procrastination devices. People with ADHD tend to have lower amounts of dopamine. Dopamine kind of makes us feel good, right? So we get a dopamine hit when we win a video game. We get a dopamine hit when we eat something we like. We get a dopamine hit when we accomplish something and we feel good about ourselves. So sometimes doing those little tasks that you don't really need to do does give you a little bit of a dopamine hit, makes you feel better. But if you're using them ineffectively to avoid the task that really needs to get done, then you're in the end not going to get done. And then you end up rushing through and getting inadequate job done. So sometimes it helps to set that low expectation and then get started going. But sometimes you have to be careful not to use or overuse. And the more you study how you get things done, the more you will learn what works better for you. And then celebrate. If you do break those big tasks to little tasks, each step of the way, each thing you do, kind of give yourself that pat on the back. That's the time you take a break, you know, get excited a little bit. And then at the end of the big project that you finish, then really celebrate. And all of that helps keeping that positive mindset. Because if you have that positive mindset, it is easier to not avoid things. Because procrastination is definitely related to mood. If you've ever been really sad or depressed, you know, something really awful happens and you're just really sad and your parent says, hey, let's go get ice cream. Sometimes you don't even want to go get ice cream. You're just so down. And procrastination kind of works that way. If you were in a bad mood or a negative mood, you have to lift that mood with some positive thinking, or else you're never going to want to get started. So I'm going to stop screen sharing because that's my last one. And then I know we have several new people today. So if you have never played Kahoot before and you don't know how, either pop on and say so. I'm going to stop the